Hey guys, and welcome to the channel. If you're new here, my name is Theo, and I'm a pretty big flashlight geek. Anyways, today I'm going to be taking a look at one of the most iconic, if not the most iconic flashlights in the custom flashlight world. That's right folks, today I have before me none other than the McGizmo Haiku. So before we get too much into the flashlight itself, I think I should give some background about its maker. The McGizmo Haiku is made by a guy named Don McLeish, perhaps one of the most OG custom flashlight builders still active today. Don has been at the forefront of numerous advances in the flashlight world and is very well known for not biting the bullet on some of the more recent lumen and questionable lumen technology. So instead he's chosen to hone his craft and prioritize both reliability and craftsmanship in his flashlights, and we can see the product of that right here in front of us. This thing is just an absolute quality beast. But I want to talk a little bit more about the Haiku itself. So the Haiku was originally released in 2009 and has seen very minor adjustments over the past almost decade. During this time period, the Haiku has risen to almost grail-like status. Well, actually it has risen to grail-like status amongst a lot of flashaholics, and I would actually argue that it's the Chris Reeve Sebenza 21 of the flashlight world. It's basically the benchmark by which other custom flashlights are held to. And just a little bit of trivia, but the Haiku's name is actually a reference to the 3-speed light engine used in the original iterations of the flashlight. Over time, other light engines were introduced, such as the Hive, but generally speaking nowadays, and according to Don's pricing charts, the Haiku refers to solely the head of the flashlight right here. But, so yeah, let's get into the flashlight itself. I want to dive right into this. So, one of the first things you'll notice about the flashlight is that it just screams quality. The attention to detail in the machining, everything about it is just impeccable. Just look at that. I mean, you can just see on the screen how good it is. And ironically enough, Don actually has a disclaimer on CPF that there will be minor imperfections in each flashlight, and you can either lower your expectations or send the flashlight back. But just speaking from experience, from what I've seen on mine and others' Haikus, there have never been any imperfections. They've always been perfect, so I wouldn't worry too much about that disclaimer or being dissatisfied about the machine quality. Among my other flashlights, this is probably one of the best flashlights I have in terms of machining quality. It is just spot on, no matter where you look at it. Alright, and that leads us into the next topic. So, the Haiku is completely constructed out of grade 5 titanium. Grade 5 is stronger and much more difficult to machine relative to its cheaper counterpart, grade 2 titanium. Some have made an argument that grade 2 titanium conducts, heat better? I think like 3 times better. But the reality is, in a flashlight of this size, and that's not really pushing the limits in terms of heat, it's not really a big deal, and grade 5 is probably optimal for a flashlight like this. But yeah, to my knowledge, Don was one of the first makers, if not the first, to make a flashlight completely out of titanium. So yeah, he's been at it for a long time. The real beauty of titanium though lies in its high strength to weight ratio. That's something you really don't get with grade 2. Grade 5 is significantly stronger and harder to machine, like I said, and it might not be the most practical for a flashlight, but I'll be damned if it isn't striking. And fun fact, titanium will also never rust. The metal develops an oxide layer the moment it hits air, so it would take thousands of years in salt water for titanium to even rust in the slightest. Just look at that. Another thing I want to mention is that it just feels so nice to the touch. I have a lot of titanium things, and it's just got that, I don't know what it is, that magical feel to it that makes it so, I don't know, desirable. Right, so on the flashlight you can see that there's a lot of ribbing, and there's even heat-sinking fins at the head. It bears saying that these are not purely aesthetic, although they do look quite nice. The ribbing on the body is very useful for getting a grip on the flashlight, and the fins at the head are for heat dissipation. And these are actually very effective. I will say that. You can feel the heat dissipating into your hand when you hold the flashlight. With that said though, Don says he doesn't intend for the Haiku to be run on high for extended periods of time. But yeah, they are very functional, and you can feel the heat seeping into your hands. That's exactly what you want, because it means that heat's being transferred away from the flashlight, and that the emitter can keep putting out higher output of light longer. So now I want to talk about the clip a little bit. So this clip is hands down one of the best clips I've seen on a flashlight. The clip's retention is super tight. Like, you can just, I'm putting a significant amount of force to do that, to even get the clip off a little. So yeah, this thing is not falling out of your pocket anytime soon. And if you look here, I've also got what Don calls the cracked ice finish. If you look closely, sorry, I think that's basically just like heat anodizing. I don't even know what that's called exactly. I don't know the exact nomenclature, terminology, etc. But yeah, it just looks stunning and just goes great with the rest of the Haiku. You also notice that on the Haiku that there's, sorry, not on the Haiku, the clip, that there's little grooves in the clip. These are attachment points for lanyards, and if you just want to attach it to something in general, I think this can be used as a tripod mount, which is very, very cool, and something that you don't see on a lot of other flashlight clips. Now, if we move on to the tail cap here, sorry, the lighting's sort of bad here. I'm in my dorm. But yeah, this flashlight uses a McClicky switch. This is Dawn's own proprietary design, and it's one of the best clicky switches on the market, hands down. So the way this works is that it's a forward clicky switch. So you press for momentary on, and you click for constant on. You depress to turn off, and if you want to cycle modes, you simply repeat. So as you can see, I'm just indenting and then depressing the switch over and over. That's how it works. Very simple, effective, and reliable. Enough said. Now I want to talk a little bit about the light engine itself I'm running in here. So earlier I mentioned that there were two light engines, the original 3S converter and the Hive. Well, what I held back was that there are also custom modders that do their own light engines a lot of the time, with Dawn's permission, of course. So what I've got in here is a Tana Super LE. I don't know if you can see that. I'll throw off another picture on top so you guys can see it more clearly. But yeah, what this effectively is that it's a custom light engine made by Tana. He's sort of the go-to guy for McGizmo and Surefire mods, and he just does a stellar job if you look here. So what this basically allows for is greater flexibility in terms of programming, and I've also got a Nichia 219C in here. Sorry, like I said, lighting's kind of crappy, but yeah. So yeah, I get a lot higher output and a lot of flexibility in terms of programming. But I don't necessarily recommend purchasing a different LE than the stock 3S and Hive unless you already have some experience with custom flashlights of this nature. You can sort of easily overdrive the LED if you're not careful with the programming. But hey, it's nice to know you have options, right? Alright, so if we turn on the Haiku, you can see that the beam has a nice tight hotspot with a pretty generous amount of flood. But I'm not gonna lie, when I first got my Haiku, I sort of felt let down by the beam, sort of cheated, especially for flashlights that's been touted as having one of the best beams out there. It's a bit hard to capture on the video, but there's actually slight rings at the edge of the beam. I mean, it doesn't actually affect its practicality and use, but it's just something sort of to note. Like, I don't like the rings at the edge of the beam. It sort of gives you tunnel vision, if you will. So yeah, that was sort of a letdown, but I just want to put out a disclaimer that I actually scratched the reflector in my own Haiku when I was putting in the Tana Super LE. So yeah, that might be user error on my part. I'm not exactly sure, and I don't feel fully prepared to comment on the LED itself and the beam. So one other thing I want to note is the size of the flashlight. The Haiku is about 4 inches, I think 3 5/8 of an inch. If I recall correctly. Here's a little size comparison. Got an HDS rotary right here, and then a over-ready Boss. So yeah, it is a pretty big flashlight, honestly, for this size. The rotary is another pretty big flashlight, so that's not really a great comparison. But the Boss uses a 18350 battery, which is significantly bigger and has more capacity, and you can see that the Boss is actually a good amount smaller than the Haiku, at least in terms of length. So yeah, it's a pretty big flashlight. But I feel like people have critiqued the Haiku and similar flashlights for their size, but we sort of got to remember is that they fit perfectly in most people's hands, unlike those smaller flashlights that I was comparing it to earlier. So yeah, this size was definitely a part of the design intent when this flashlight was being designed by Dawn. Okay, and finally, because we've got to address it, the price. The Haiku costs roughly $450 brand new and straight from Dawn. Holy crap, you probably want to say, are you crazy? First off, I probably am kind of crazy to drop that much on a flashlight, but then again, so are the oodles of other people who have dropped the same for a Haiku. So let me try and justify the price. I assure you this isn't the cognitive dissonance that sometimes occurs after we buy a crap product and try to justify buying it. So I want to start off by saying that everything is relative. Most people drop around $500 on their smartphone. Heck, if you're an Apple user, the latest iPhones are pushing $1,000. And you probably use your phone for a couple of years before you upgrade to the latest and greatest model. Let's say you buy a McGizmo Haiku. The Haiku, because it's made out of titanium, is practically guaranteed to last longer than you live. The body, that is. So you want to say, well, what if the internals of the flashlight crap out? First off, modern solid-state electronics are exceedingly reliable, and which makes failure highly unlikely, and unless you're beating the crap out of this flashlight, yeah, it's going to be pretty hard to crap out those internals. Batteries are always replaceable too. Secondly, that leads me to my second point. Secondly, most of the money in this flashlight is in the host, actually. So the host is sort of the titanium shell of the flashlight, and you also have the switch in here, and then the light engine inside. So yeah, those are just merely fractions of the total cost of the Haiku. Replacing them is very, very cheap. In fact, my switch crapped out on this flashlight a while back, which is a McClicky, by the way, and it took me all of 2 minutes to swap out the old switch and put in a new one. And Overready was even kind enough to send 2 switches for their warranty service. So yeah, great company, by the way. Overready is just awesome. Yeah, what was I saying? So yeah, think about it. You could buy the Haiku and never have to buy another flashlight again. It's as simple as buy once, cry once. High value items like the Haiku tend to get a lot of flack from people who aren't willing to drop the money for lifetime ownership. You know what I mean? They don't hesitate to drop in excess of $500 on the latest smartphone every couple of years. That's just, I sort of hope you understand what I'm getting at. And that doesn't even factor in the stuff you can't quantify. It's just pride of ownership you get every time you use a flashlight like the Haiku. It's just something you have to own to sort of understand is what I'm trying to say. I should also note that relative to a lot of other custom flashlights on the market, the Haiku is actually a downright bargain. You just have to take a look at the Hanko Trident, which regularly goes for around $1,200, and you have to win a lotto to even purchase. So yeah, the beauty of purchasing a McGizmo is also that they hold their value. Because Dawn has consistently been in the game for so long, values on McGizmo flashlights have sort of stabilized and are relatively inelastic. You don't see that with a lot of other brands and custom makers. For example, just take a look at Okluma or Overready even, to get an idea of what I'm talking about. Initially, secondary market values on their flashlights were very high, but that was just because there wasn't a lot of supply and there was a lot of demand. And over time, the secondary market values on their flashlights have sort of dropped because there's more supply and there's less demand as a result. So yeah, simple supply and demand. Another great thing about Dawn is that you can always purchase a flashlight from him. He's always got more. And so yeah, that's part of the reason why the values on the flashlights are relatively inelastic and they hold their value. So yeah, with respect to secondary value, this is pretty much as good as you're going to get on a flashlight. They hold their value. Alright, so who's this flashlight for? Well, first off, you need to understand that the Haiku is a luxury item. This is something that you just can't pick up at the dollar store. Sure, you could go down to the dollar store and buy any other flashlight and it would get the job done. But it probably wouldn't get it done as well, and it wouldn't give you that sense of ownership, that pride you get from owning something this great. What I'm trying to say, I guess, is that this is functional jewelry. This is something that Joe Bob down the street isn't going to have. This is something that millions of other people that you meet with flashlights aren't going to have. And if that's something that you're about, then, well, this flashlight is for you. If you have the means to acquire it and want something special and unique, this is the flashlight for you. Anyhow, I think that's about all I've got for you guys on this flashlight. In essence, the Haiku is the benchmark of the custom flashlight world, and for very good reason. So if you liked what you watched, please consider liking the video and hitting that sub button. It really helps. Peace out.